am live. I am continuing a lot to remember. I am still at chapter, I think it was 21. Yeah, on Snails and Serpents. This is Joan Marshall Grant. It is her book about her journeys through the Lot. It's in France. And she recounts a lot of memories and also ancient history. Anyway, we are here in chapter 21, and we have just followed Charles, so there's not very much left. The same evening I found Louise standing on a stool while she tried to reach a snail that was clinging to the ceiling of her kitchen. Then I saw that there were snails on the walls, snails on the table, snails inching their way purposefully across the floor. Goodness, how tiresome, I said feelingly. Even when we lived in Cornwall and snails ate everything in the garden, at least they did not chase us indoors. A friend brought them as a present for Pierre, but we were out, so she put them on the windowsill, and then they escaped from their bag, said Louise placidly, as I managed to steady the stool just before it toppled. I was glad to be able to help her, having become an efficient snail handler through caring for and for Eustace, whom I had found cowering in a lettuce when I lived in Albany, that cloister of Piccadilly where the more usual pets are not allowed. He had grown from the size of my little fingernail to a full 4 inches when extended, and rode contentedly on my shoulder when I took him for an outing to St. James Park. Louise captured the last snail and put it with the rest of the 4 dozen in a wire salad basket, which she covered with a plate and hung from a hook in one of the rafters. She looked up at them sympathetically. Poor things, they will have to stay in there and starve for 10 days at least, preferably for a fortnight. I always hope they do not notice me preparing salads right under their prison. But I thought only Roman snails, the kind you get in restaurants, were edible. All snails are edible as far as I know. They can be grey or brown or blonde or brindled. According to Pierre, the small ones that are striped, like old-fashioned peppermint humbugs, called escargots de Wynne, have an even better flavour than the petit gris, she sighed. I wish I enjoyed eating them, for then perhaps I shouldn't so much dislike preparing them. I was shocked to think what quantities of free munch had escaped my attention during our 2 years in Cornwall, when the snail population had increased immoderately, because the birds, who were their natural opponents, had been eaten by hawks and buzzards, whom myxomatosis had deprived of their normal diet of rabbits. At first, fond memories of Eustace had caused me to pick his kinsmen gently off lettuces and carry them in a basket to distant pastures. But after they had finished off the vegetables and started to strip every leaf from the rose bushes, acute animosity was the only emotion I felt as I stamped on them or threw them into a bucket of brine. Had I only known better, I could have given bankets of snails instead of growing exasperated. Are they difficult to cook? I asked Louise. Horrid rather than difficult. After they have starved, which empties the gut of anything poisonous they may have been eating, you put them in a bucket and sprinkle them with rough salt. This makes them disgorge their slime, and after about 4 hours you wash the slime off. This would be fairly easy if I could hold them under a running tap, but our well is so low that I have to wash them in a basin, which is a nastier job than laundering the handkerchiefs of a family who are all suffering from severe head colds. The image of myself as chef d'escargot began to fade, but I was still curious to hear the rest of the process. Simmer them for an hour, then take them out of the shells and wash them a lot more, said Louise. Either rub each one in your hands or in a cloth, for this dislodges the black bit at the end of the body, which the French realistically call the boule de merde. This expertise was taught to me by the proprietress of the restaurant à l'escargot in Figeac, who is widely famed for her snails. She says it allows her customers to eat double their usual quantity without suffering even a twinge of indigestion. Then you wash the shells if you're going to serve the snails in them, but in the lot this is only done to please foreigners. We went to à l'escargot last week. Charles ate 3 dozen snails and said they were the best he had ever tasted. But several other customers were eating their snails out of their shells, and they all seemed to be French. By foreign, I only meant French who are not also lutois, but I still have not told you how to cook snails. The next stage is to simmer them for 2 hours without their shells, of course, in a cooked bouillon. I make mine with 3 parts of water to 1 part of white wine, a dash of wine vinegar, the juice of a lemon, a shred of orange peel, and a bouquet of herbs, preferably parsley, thyme, tarragon, fennel, and bay leaf. Then all you have to do is to make some garlic butter, to which you add plenty of chopped parsley, put each snail back into a shell and pour the butter over it, and then heat them piping hot in the oven when you want to eat them. For the first time I'm glad to be allergic to garlic, for this gets me out of eating snails, I said fervently. That allergy won't provide an excuse in a lot, for they have several non-garlic recipes. The washing and the simmering is always the same, but after that you can saute them in butter and sprinkle them with parsley, or you can eat them hot from the cooked bouillon and dunk them in iced mayonnaise, or serve them with sauce américaine, which you can get from any cookery book giving this recipe for lobster, or in a sauce made by sauteing small cubes of raw ham and chopped sauteed in butter and thickening it with a sprinkling of flour and some cream. If you can't get sorrel, you can make do with spinach and a dash of lemon juice. She looked sympathetically up at the salad basket, through which the week after next gastronomic treat was eyeing us reproachfully. One of them reminded me of Eustace, but I told Louise that Charles was waiting for me, for she does not use alcohol, and I felt in need of a restorative drink. So this was the end of chapter 21. Chapter 22 is In Respect of Rivers. I hope you have a good Saturday.